since Mayor Daley announced that our guest today was taking over as Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago school system. Our guest today is a lifelong Chicagoan. In 1998, here comes Alderman Joe Moore. Alderman Joe, stand up. 49th Ward, Joe Moore. Just sit down, relax. They don't, the terrorists taught you well. Sit down. You're an alderman, you can sit anywhere you want. Just introduce yourself. In 1998, our guest today joined the Chicago school system, leading the Magnet School program, where he achieved some dramatic improvements. And 2 years later, he was named Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public Schools. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to the City Club of Chicago the Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public School System, Arne Duncan. Arne?
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here today, and I want to thank my father, Starkey Duncan, and his fiancée, Marilee, for coming out today as he came out last year. 10 years ago, who would have believed that today our 8th graders would be beating national norms in reading on both the Iowa and the ISAT test? That we could cut in half from 48, a staggering number, 48% of our students in the bottom quartile, we could cut that in half down to 24, that we could double the number of students in the top quartile, and that the Chicago Public Schools could be fiscally responsible and produce 10 consecutive balanced budgets. Well, let me tell you one guy who did believe, and that's Mayor Daley. 10 years ago, in 1995, he put everything on the line when he took control of our public schools and focused the entire city on his passion for rebuilding the school system top to bottom. People said it was political suicide, that it couldn't be done, but the mayor put his political capital on the line and led the effort to get our fiscal house in order, to end social promotions, to build and renovate schools in every single community, to enhance safety, and to improve student performance through a back-to-basics curriculum. Why did he do this? Why did he step in when so many people said he should stay away? Simply put, I think the mayor believed in our children, knew what they could accomplish if we just gave them a chance, and understood what it would mean to our entire city if we could build a viable public school system. The mayor's belief in the possible, his leap of faith 10 years ago, was not only absolutely critical, but I believe it may be judged as the greatest legacy he ever leaves our city. The progress we have seen is real, and it is remarkable. 10 years of balanced budgets have created fiscal discipline, and with a new 4-year teacher's contract that will take us through 2007, 20 years of labor peace have given parents and students a desperately needed sense of stability. Along with good management and labor peace, I'm pleased to report today that student performance is also at an all-time high. As I said earlier, 8th graders are now beating national norms. This past year, on the Iowa test, in reading, 55% of our 8th graders were at or above national norms, their best score ever. And in math, they were at 57%. 63% of our schools, almost 2/3 of our elementary schools, improved this year on the Iowa test. And on the ISAT and Prairie State exams for elementary and high school students, almost 3/4, 74% of our schools improved. And test scores on both are also currently at all-time highs. Most encouraging for me is that of the 18 total indicators on the ISAT and the Prairie State exams, we improved in 15 of those 18 indicators, including all 5 at the high school level. And in all 15, we improved at a faster rate than the rest of the state. When that happens, we are, by definition, closing the achievement gap, and that is exactly what we must continue to do. But for all that success, for all the celebrations we had this summer, we know how far we still have to go. We're not where we want to be, where we can be, or where we will be. And we challenge ourselves every single day to think about how we can continue to accelerate our progress and go to the next level. To get there, we are focusing the entire system on 3 core strategies with a laser-like focus that we are convinced will make us better. We strive at all costs to avoid chasing the latest fad, the latest crisis, or the latest headline, and stick with those things that over time we know will make a difference in our students' lives. As long as I'm here, as long as Barbara Easton Watkins, our wonderful Chief Education Officer, Michael Scott, our Board President, as long as we're here, literacy, reading, will always be our top priority. Simply put, if we teach our children to read, to learn to love to read at an early age, we open up a world of opportunity to them. If we don't do that, we can throw out all the other bells and whistles we might want. Nothing else matters. How are we trying to improve literacy? A couple common sense strategies. More time on task. When Barbara came in, we mandated 2 hours of reading and writing for every child, every grade, every class, every school in Chicago. We went out, Barbara and I, this year and listened to principals where we were seeing great progress, great success. And many of them was fascinating. Many of us told us what they're doing is not only more during the school day, more after school, but more on Saturdays. And so this year we opened up 115 of our schools on Saturday mornings to do 2 more hours of reading. Where on the ISAT, we saw about 73% of our schools improve, 80% of our schools with Saturday Academy showed progress. We created a new position in the Chicago Public Schools, that of reading specialists. And before we got here, it was fascinating to me. We had all kinds of other specialists that are all very important. Social studies, library, gym, PE, art, music. We never had something so fundamentally important, so critically important as a reading specialist that we funded centrally. In the first year, we started with 115 reading specialists. Last year, we went to 320, and we'll open schools next week with over 400 reading specialists, some schools with 2 that have historically struggled. What do we charge each reading specialist to do? What is their job? A couple things. They have to team teach and mentor and work with other teachers. They have to help struggling students individually. And they have to work with parents after school and really help drive this culture of literacy at the local school level. Put together family literacy nights that bring in whole families to really push this forward. And for the first time this fall, we're going to start what we call our early assessments. Historically, the first time we test students is when they're 10 years old, in the 3rd grade. And as we all know, then it's too late. We have to start much, much earlier. So for the first time ever this school year, every single kindergarten student in the system will be assessed 3 times a year, start of the year, middle, and at the end. And instead of about 115 schools that are struggling, we're going to assess every single kindergarten through 2nd grader 3 times a year. So that by the time they get to us in the 3rd grade, that first benchmark year, they will have been assessed 9 times. And what we want to do is give great data to teachers and to parents and to principals, and so that we can track progress every year, build upon students' strengths, improve their weaknesses, and by the time we get to 3rd grade, we want to see dramatic improvements. All the progress we've seen at the 8th grade level, quite frankly, has not been mirrored at the 3rd grade level. We have a long way to go there, and frankly, we're tired of playing catch-up. We need to get students ready. We need to get much better data, much better evaluations early on. And we think over time, not overnight, we think over time, these earlier assessments are going to make a great difference in our students' lives. The second core strategy of literacy always being at the top, always being at the forefront. The second core strategy is what we call our human capital initiative. How do we recruit and then retain the best and brightest to come into Chicago Public Schools and help us transform the school system? And it has to start first with my management team. Some of you may remember the bad old days where many people who ended up in central office were people who had really been kicked out of their schools, who either hadn't educated kids or had done something funny with money, and they sort of come downtown and disappear into the bureaucracy for a couple years and then emerge 3 or 5, 8 years later, and they're running the joint. And the central office really had no credibility, had become the laughingstock of the system. In fact, you had to do something bad to get down there. Well, we tried to change that culture dramatically. The first person I hired was Barbara Easton Watkins, who's done an extraordinary job as our Chief Education Officer. I thought she was the best principal of the 600 schools we had. She's come in and more than rose to the challenge. She has extraordinary credibility amongst her peers. She's been out there every single day and knows what it takes to be successful. And in turn, Barbara's built a great team around here. Domingo Trujillo and Nancy Lejo and other principals who have been in the streets, who have turned around very tough schools and know what it takes to be successful. The culture's changing on the education side. And then we tried to add a mix of people, non-educators, people from other backgrounds, to come in and really help make us stronger as an organization. Jay mentioned earlier Dave Vitale, former bank president, former head of the Board of Trade, who's come in, is working for the high price of $1 a year and providing just extraordinary guidance and wisdom as we try and manage every single dollar. Resources being so short, so scarce, it's critically important. Manage every single dollar well. Other people, Bob Runcie's here, Pedro Martinez, Lisa Scruggs, people who come in from the private sector who could be making a lot more money, working less hours, doing other things, but they have a passion for the city, They have a passion for the public schools and for our children, and they want to make us the best school system in the country. And what I'm trying to do is surround myself with the smartest, with the strongest people possible. We have great debates and great dialogue, and I love the passion, and I love the conversations. And all that, I think, makes me better, but more importantly, I think makes the system better. And the decisions we come up with collectively, I think, can take us to the next level. We talk about the management team, then we have to go the next step is teachers. And obviously there's nothing more important than getting great, great teachers in front of every child in every classroom in the city. And this is a fascinating time to be thinking about recruiting and then retaining great talent, because it's a very, very interesting window of opportunity. The Chicago Public Schools, like many other public and private sector companies, has a baby boomer generation that's aging and it's moving towards retirement. In fact, we anticipate over the next 4 to 5 years as many as a third of our teachers, 8,000 of our 25,000 teachers, may be going off into retirement. And while that presents some real challenges, quite frankly, we think it presents some huge opportunities. And we literally think we have a chance to transform the workforce over the next couple of years. And what I tell our team, and Ascension Juarez is here, who runs our HR department, and again, another wonderful former principal, what I tell our team every day is the type of people we bring into the system over these next couple of years will truly shape the face of public education over the next 30. And we want to do it the right way. We're doing a couple things, again, just common sense strategies. We're pushing our principals to hire much, much earlier. Historically in Chicago Public Schools, we hired most of our teachers very, very late, in July, August, even into September, after the school year started. And what happens then, you lose much of your great talent to the suburbs and to other places, and people who maybe even wanted to come teach in the public schools but had guaranteed offers elsewhere and took that opportunity. So what we're doing now is hiring people in May, in June, in July, and just trying to just pick around the edges late in the year, and the caliber of talent much earlier is much, much stronger. Secondly, we're pursuing some different strategies. We're working very, very hard in the area of alternative certification. And there are many, many great people out there who have a passion for public education, who want to teach, who just didn't happen to major in education when they were a 19-year-old undergrad in college. And when I came into this job 3 years ago, I set what I thought was an unrealistic goal. I said a quarter of the teachers we bring in, I want to come in through alternative certification routes. And in fact, this year we've actually surpassed that. A third of our teachers, about 500 out of the 1,500 teachers we hired this year, are going to come in through these alternative certification routes. And they're fascinating people, chemical engineers and reform lawyers and journalists and people from many, many walks of life who are really coming back to something they have a passion for. It's been really, really interesting post 9/11. There are lots of people, I think, who are making money and other things and being, having some of the trappings of success, but weren't doing things that were meaningful to them. And what we've done is create a series of opportunities for people from all walks of life to come in, to run through a year's program, which will get their master's, and to get right into the classroom. And these people are going to make us much, much better collectively, and we're trying to use them very strategically. We have some areas of critical need, special education, math and science. Over half the math teachers we hired this year are coming through alternative certification, and a very high percentage of our special education teachers. So we're really trying to work hard to target them in areas where we need them. With the new contract that Jim Francic and Ruth and others worked so hard on with the teachers union, we're giving our principals more flexibility to be innovative and to build the best teacher pool possible. For the first time ever, in the first 4 years of a teacher's career, we can fire them without cause, without worrying about tenure. And the vast majority of our teachers are very, very strong. We want to support them. We want to help them learn and grow during those critical years. But again, honestly, when you're bringing in 1,500 to 1,600 teachers every year, not every single one's going to be an A. And for the first time ever, we can remove those teachers without going into any battles there. For the first time ever, we can hire part-time teachers. Maybe it's a mother at home who has 2 children. Maybe it's a university professor that wants to come teach advanced algebra or chemistry or biology for us. First time ever, we can hire retirees to come in. Again, these are historically great, great pools of talent that were locked out of the public school system. That's no longer the case, and we're really trying to empower our principals to bring in the best and brightest from every walk of life to work with our children. And then finally, as we think about human capital, we think about bringing in great teachers, we're trying to build not just for this school year, but for the future. And with the mayor's leadership, we created what we call the Summer Fellows Program. And a couple years ago, 2 summers ago, we brought in 25 great undergrads who were between their sophomore and junior year, between their junior and senior year, to come in, spend a year teaching with us, they live in some of our college dormitories, and get a real sense of what it was like to be a part of the Chicago Public Schools. And this was a lesson I learned very early on. I went out to recruit at university, was talking to Illinois State and other places, U of I, was out talking to seniors, and one of the people came up and said, Arne, do you know all these people already have job offers? You're way too late. And most of the great seniors have gotten job offers from where they did their student teaching. So we have to move our recruiting process down much, much earlier. So we started with 25 summer fellows 2 years ago, went to 125 last year, and then 200 this year. And we try to treat these summer fellows like CEOs, like star athletes, and recruit them. These are the best and brightest from around the country. We take them to ballparks and museums, to the movies. The mayor takes them to breakfast. I take them to lunch. And we want them to know how much we need them to come into Chicago public schools. And the results have been very, very interesting. A high percentage are actually coming back to teach with us once they graduate. So it's great to have that pool of talent coming in from around the country. But more importantly, they become our ambassadors. They go back to their universities. They go back to their dorms. They go back to their college classes. And they tell the Chicago story. And they let people know what a great city Chicago can be to live in for young people, and we all know that. And we're trying to make Chicago a great, great city in which to teach. And they help us to expand the pool of talent we can bring in. Stepping back a minute to look at the big picture in terms of what we're doing with teachers, this summer we actually fired 300 teachers, 350 teachers who weren't certified, who weren't qualified. We moved them out. This year we're hiring 1,500 to 1,600 teachers. We had 14,000 resumes come in from around the country of people who wanted to teach. And never have we been in a better position to bring in great talent to fill the classrooms of every school in Chicago. Where you have great teachers, what do you need? You also need great leadership. You need great principals. It's a cliche. We know there's no good schools in Chicago, none that don't have great leadership. And so we have to really think through, how do we train our principals? And today our principals are truly CEOs. They're managing multi-million-dollar budgets. They're managing a physical plant. They're working with parents, the community, the media, and they have to be first and foremost instructional leaders. And we're working with a series of business leaders from around town, led by Penny Pritzker and the Public Education Fund, to really think through, how do we better train principals? How do we develop a better career path? How do we make sure that the best and brightest are coming in to lead all of our 600 schools? We're working with a new structure that Barbara Easton Watkins has put together, called our Area Instructional Officers, which are 24 of our best and brightest principals from around the system who we've recruited to help lead different areas of the city and mentor and support those principals as they're growing. And part of what these AIOs, these Area Instructional Officers, part of their responsibility is to help find the next generation of talent, the future principals, assistant principals, reading specialists, great teachers, and help them get them ready to step up in the years ahead. And on the principal side, we're doing a couple of counterintuitive things as well. At the same time that we have an aging workforce, on the teacher side, it's even more so on the principal side. At the same time, we're creating many, many more schools. We're actually shrinking, actively shrinking the eligibility pool for principals. Why is that? Because it's so critically important that we have great leadership in every single school. And rather than having 40 or 50 resumes go out to LSCs from which to select, where it's very, very hard to sift through that, we want to really narrow it down to those that are proven instructional leaders, those we know that can make a difference. And with a pool of 3 or 4 or 5 candidates, rather than 40 or 50, we think LSCs can make a great, great decision and get a great leader there. Historically, the principal eligibility list was far too big. We found we actually had some dead people on the list. So we started by weeding those out, and then we and then we weeded out those, frankly, who had just come through on a process standpoint, those who had not proven to be instructional leaders. And we're getting down to a core of great, great people. We want to continue to expand that core over time of great leaders who can come in and really do something very, very special there. Our third core strategy, starting with literacy, then looking at human capital. On the human capital side, management team, teachers, principals. The third core strategy is creating more learning opportunities for all of our students. And we have 2 basic facts. Starting with 5-year-olds in kindergarten simply doesn't work. It's too late. We have to create many more learning opportunities. And secondly, we must totally redefine the very nature of what it means to be a school. The old way of school buildings being open 9 to 2:30, 5 days a week, 9 months a year, is obsolete. Our schools have to become community centers, open 11, 12, 13 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, 11 to 12 months out of the year. On the early childhood side, and working very, very hard with Mary Ellen Karen and her team, we want to continue to increase access and opportunity for students. And we've gone from about 24,000 students a couple years ago, 2001 in early childhood programs, to 28,500 this year. Every child needs to start with us by the time they're 3 if we expect them to be ready to learn at grade level when they're 6 years old. And as we create more slots, we want to create more full-day, full-year slots. For the first time ever this fall, 65% of our kindergarten slots will be full-day programs. And we have to become more creative. We have overcrowding issues on the southwest side and the northwest side. We have many, many young children in those areas. So what we're starting to do is starting a 3rd shift. In schools, we'll put early childhood programs, pre-K programs, Head Start, and in the afternoon. So we have students coming in 2 to 6, 3 to 7 to get the help they need and deserve. And secondly, our schools have to become community centers. And we've talked about this, and this is one that's very, very personal to me. My mother tried to start an after-school program in a Chicago public school in 1960, 44 years ago, and couldn't get into that school. It wouldn't let her in. And this was a neighborhood where there's nothing for kids to do in the afternoon. There's no alternative to the streets, no boys and girls clubs, no Ys, no park districts, no libraries. So she's worked in the church basement for many, many years. Then 32 years later, in 1992, my sister and I and a small team also tried to start an after-school program in the same neighborhood and also had no ability, no success to get into a school. We actually ended up in the same church basement as my mother's program. And why is it so critical that our schools become community centers? A couple of reasons. We all know society has changed. Whether it's more two-parent working families, whether it's more single moms working 1, 2, even 3 jobs, whether it's too many of our children, quite frankly, going home to no-parent families, all of our children need great, great opportunities after school. And this is an issue that cuts through race, it cuts through class, it cuts through neighborhood. Our schools are also great, great physical resources. We have 600 schools in the city, every single neighborhood, rich, poor, black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Our schools have classrooms, they have libraries, they have computer labs, they have gyms. Many have pools. And these physical resources belong to the kids and to the community and not to the engineers union. And we have to open them up. We have to open them up and give people access. And we want a great, great array of very high quality after school programs. Academic enrichment and drama and arts and sports and music and chess, debate and yearbook. And all those things that help our students develop their skills, develop their self-esteem, and give them a reason to be excited about coming to school every single day. And we need programs not just for children, but for parents, GED, and ESL, and family counseling, and mini lending libraries where we're sending books home with parents at night. We have a set of schools now where you have 150, 200 parents coming to school every single day, not for the children's education, but for their own. And when that happens, I think we're on to something very, very special. And we want to provide all those things that are not considered extras or not considered extracurriculars at our city's finest private schools. Lab and Latin Parker, but for far too long have been seen as extras for public school students. And today, we have almost half our 435,000 students. About 200,000 of our students are enrolled in our after-school programs at both the elementary and the high school level. And as we expand the number of schools at our community centers, we don't want to do it alone, and we don't have to do it alone. Chicago, as you guys know, has so many wonderful, wonderful nonprofits and social service agencies who tutor and mentor and provide support. And we want to bring those agencies, those institutions, into our schools and partner together. One of our best partnerships is actually with the Boys and Girls Clubs, where the Boys and Girls Clubs have actually closed 3 of their facilities, gotten out of the bricks and mortar business, and are running their programs out of our schools. And we run the school 9 to 2:30, and they run the school 9 to 2:30 in the afternoon. They run the school from 2:30 to 9 o'clock at night. And we want to develop more of those partnerships with institutions around the city. And what are the results? What are the results of this investment in after-school programming? While 63% of our schools overall went up on the Iowa test, 70% of our schools that are community centers improved. And we have schools like Monroe Elementary that are showing dramatic gains in recent years, that have wonderful partnerships with community agencies and truly do involve the community and do many things like music and sewing and art for parents in their school. And the principal of Monroe, James Manconi, not only leads the school during the day, but he actually teaches a GED class for parents in the evening. And when families learn together, I'm convinced our children will always thrive. If we do these three things well over time, constant focus on literacy at the forefront, building great human capital, recruiting and retaining the best and brightest, creating more learning opportunities, not just for our youngest students, but for all of our students, high school and elementary, I'm absolutely convinced that more years than not, we can see the kind of progress we saw this year, with as many as 75% of our schools making gains. And every year, Barbara and I and Michael will push to work harder and smarter on these 3 core strategies. But when you see our trends, you have 2 choices. You can declare victory, thank Barbara and her team for their brilliance and their hard work, pat ourselves on the back and say we're heroes, our work is done. Or you can ask the tough and the honest question, which is that if 75% of our schools improved this year, by definition that means 25% did not. And so what is happening in those schools? And if our commitment is truly to every single child in every single school, then there's only one road down which we can walk. We must look carefully at those schools that struggle and embrace that reality. And as you cut the data, in fact, many of those schools that didn't do as well this year, the long-term trends are actually very, very positive. Many of those schools, 4 out of the last 5 years, 8 out of the last 10, we've seen improvement. And so you don't get too caught up in the year-to-year trends. You really look at the long-term reality, and it's actually very, very good. But unfortunately, that is not always the case. And let me just give you one example of where that's not happening. And I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about a school at the other end of the spectrum, and that's Austin High School. And let me give you a couple numbers about Austin High School. 6% of the students at Austin are reading at grade level. That means 94% are not. It has a 62% dropout rate. We're losing more than half the students every single year. And 74% of the children who live in Austin High School's attendance area, every school in Chicago has an attendance area, 74% of children who live in Austin's attendance area choose not to attend Austin High School. It has become a school of last resort, a school for those children with no other options. And what is most troubling is that these numbers do not reflect any recent downward trend over the last year, last 2 years, even the last 5 years. And I've been spending a lot of time in the Austin community lately, and what the residents tell me is these statistics, these numbers, have defined Austin's reality for decades, for the last 25 to 30 years. Austin High School is in desperate need of a rebirth, is in desperate need of a fresh start and a new beginning, and that's why the Renaissance 2010 initiative is so critically important. To those who say Renaissance 2010 is too radical, too tough a medicine, too much change, too fast, I ask you one simple question. For the last 30 years, where's the moral outrage been of those who profess to fight for kids? Who has said enough is enough, that the children of Austin deserve better? Why so long a deafening silence, while we as adults perpetuated a status quo that almost guaranteed our students' failure in life because we failed to educate them as children? How many thousands of students did we lose to the streets, and then over time, all too willingly, many to our jails? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that silence is over, and we will not lose another generation to cycles of poverty and despair. Austin High School and other schools like it, we're seeing this long history of failure, will be transformed as part of Renaissance 2010. And what is the Renaissance 2010 framework? It's a couple things. It's a commitment to create at least 100 new great schools in every neighborhood of Chicago. Roughly a third will be traditional Chicago public schools, a third will be charter schools, and a third will be contract schools. We'll build upon the lessons learned in our recent years of innovation and new school creation within the Chicago public schools. From our charter schools, we've learned so much the need to have great accountability. In every new school we open, we'll have 5-year performance contracts. So in exchange for greater autonomy, all these new schools will have clear accountability to us, to the children, and to the communities they serve. From our high school redesign initiative, where we have worked so hard to break up large, struggling inner-city high schools and create smaller schools there, all these schools will be much smaller, 400 to 500 students. And our teenagers are desperate for more structure. They're desperate for adults in their life who care about them. We have to start to create the environment, the climate, where those types of relationships are possible. At the high school level, by 2010, we'll create a great new menu of options in every neighborhood of the city, so students will no longer feel compelled to take 2 buses and an L to go find a quality school. We want a range of great options, 8 to 10 options, selective enrollment, vocational education, math and science, fine performing arts, the world languages, the prestigious international baccalaureate curriculum, which was designed for the children of diplomats in Geneva, Switzerland, which has become so prominent in some of our schools here. Military academies, even perhaps single-sex schools, which we haven't been allowed to do here historically in Chicago. And what I fundamentally think is that the model of the large American high school, I think that model is fundamentally broken. We have to create smaller schools. We have to create a range of options. We have to give parents and students choices. And we have to let them figure out what's the best learning environment for them. Every child has a different interest, different skill, different passion. We want to create a great range of options. And at the end of the day, I want to be able to look any parent in the eye anywhere in the city, say you have 8, 10, 12 great options to select from. You figure out. Let the marketplace play. You figure out what's the best learning environment for you. And finally, from our original Renaissance schools that we closed 2 years ago for academic failure and reopened a year later with dramatically better results, we learned that we need at least a 1-year transition, and maybe sometimes even 2 years, to have a real and a symbolic break from the past, and to use that time to truly engage the community in a process of creating these new schools. Politically, it'd be much, much easier to close a school in June or July and open up in September, and we've seen other school districts around the country do that. But I'm convinced that that's a path that simply perpetuates mediocrity and the status quo. It doesn't give you the time and the space that's critical to allow the community to help shape these new schools in a meaningful way. With time and space and support and the opportunity to innovate, I'm convinced we will make Chicago the mecca nationally for education leaders who are passionate about public education, who have an entrepreneurial spirit, and who want to make a difference in our students' lives. And where did the idea from Renaissance 2010 come from? It came from many different places. On a personal level, it started with my family before I was born. My mother started a program over 40 years ago in a church basement. She walked away from teaching junior college because she was tired of teaching 19-year-olds who had graduated from the public schools how to read. She thought it was a little bit late at that point. So she started running an after-school program to teach young children and their families how to read. On a personal level, it continued in 1992 when my sister and I and a small team ran an I Have a Dream program, where we took an entire class, 40 sixth graders from one of the worst public schools in Chicago, and promised those sixth graders they worked hard for us for 6 years, would help pay for their college education. And of those 40 students, 87% went on to graduate from high school. The class 1 year ahead of us from Shakespeare, same children, same poverty issues, same neighborhood, those students had a 67% dropout rate. 87% graduation rate versus 67% dropout rate. The difference was not poverty, was not neighborhood, was not whatever, it was opportunity. We have to provide those opportunities. And then in 1995, with a small team, I was very, very fortunate to be part of a group that helped to create the Ariel Community Academy, a small public school that we wanted to be a model of inner city excellence. And we went through the joy and the pain and the exhilaration of new school creation. And being a part of that experience was very, very formative for me. I wanted to give other people that same opportunity. The seeds for Renaissance 2010 were planted by extraordinary community leaders like Father Mike Flager, who's here today, and I'm so pleased to have you here. Father Mike Flager, when I got the job a couple years ago, I'll never forget, one of the first calls I got was from him. And he talked to me about being principal for a day out at Calumet High School. And he talked to kids in the lunchrooms, and this is what he said. They told him, this is students at Calumet High School, they told Father Mike, this is a school you go to when you can't get in anywhere else. This is a school you go to when you fall through the cracks. And what Father Mike said to me is that no child should feel that way about their school. There's no way you can have any pride if you feel that way about your school academically. And by the way, the numbers for Calumet, unfortunately, are identical mirror of Austin's. Reading scores in single digits, dropout rates of over 50%, 75% of students choosing not to go to that school, and this has been true for not years, but decades. And interesting, actually, tonight we're going to be back out at the community at Calumet High School tonight to start the transformation process that over the next 2 years, as part of Renaissance 2010, we'll create a couple great new schools in a neighborhood that's been far too long underserved. The idea for Renaissance 2010 has been supported in a major, major way by the business and philanthropic community who have stepped in to help fund the incubation costs of these new schools. And what do we want to do? We want to bring on a principal and a couple lead teachers a year ahead of time, a year before the school opens, so they can plan and build curriculum and recruit a great staff and recruit students and get to know the community. We have, unfortunately, given all of our fiscal constraints, we don't have the money to pay people to run schools that don't exist yet. So having the business community step up, and our goal is to raise at least $500,000. So in that year of planning, that year to plan and think and dream, we can have people on the ground ready to work. And that financial support is so critically important. And finally, the mayor challenged us to take the next big step. No more pilot programs, no more half measures. He called on us to have the courage to change. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we all know we have an extraordinary opportunity ahead of us. And many of you probably remember in 1987 when the former Secretary of Education, Bill Bennett, came out and called Chicago the worst public school system in America. And we all know here how far we've come and how much times have changed. And a month ago, the current Deputy Secretary of Education, Eugene Hickok, came out to give us a $9 million grant, which the federal government hasn't done here in Chicago in many, many years. And let me tell you what his quote was. This is the current secretary a month ago. He said, "America's watching the schools of this great city, and good things are happening. Years from now, maybe your children will look back at this time as a time that changed everything forever. Years from now, maybe your children will look back at this time as a time that changed everything forever." The eyes of the nation are truly upon us today. As I talk to my colleagues, other superintendents from around the country, they're constantly asking, why are your charter schools so successful? How are you breaking up those large high schools and doing things differently? How do you close and reopen schools that are dramatically better? How do you truly involve the community? And how do you get the business community to step up and support public schools just as they traditionally support the arts and the orchestras and the symphonies of the world? And what I tell my colleagues around the country is it has everything to do with the character of the city and the character of the people. You look at Chicago. You start with an extraordinary mayor who has put everything on the line for our children. We have an extraordinary board led by board president Michael Scott, and we have a board that rivals that, I think, of any Fortune 500 company in the city or in the country. President Scott is proud to be born and raised in North Lawndale, has never forgotten his roots, and is absolutely committed to giving every child in North Lawndale and the entire West Side the same opportunities that children in other areas of the city have. And his passion and his leadership and his partnership with Barbara and I has been phenomenal. We're blessed here in Chicago to have business leaders like so many of you with a strong civic spirit who know you owe so much more to the city than just the chance to earn a living. We have generous foundations like MacArthur and Community Trust and Polk and the Public Education Fund, Joyce and the Staines Family Foundation. We have religious leaders like Father Flager and Willie Barrow next to him, Bishop Brazier and others who have fought for justice and for opportunity and for those who have not had those chances for so many years. We have to help them. We have community leaders all across Chicago and elected officials at every level who always fight for their constituents, but who also fight for the entire city as a whole. And for all of those reasons, I wouldn't trade places with my peers anywhere in the country for any amount of money. People might think my job is hard, but I honestly feel like the luckiest person in the world. For me, a kid from the South Side who's had a chance to see both the best and the worst of what education can be, this is a dream come true. It's a chance to really help kids. It's a chance to be part of a team, a movement that I'm convinced will change everything forever. Ultimately, you have to believe in our children. And why do I believe? Because I've seen it all my life. Growing up, I've seen children come from no money, from very difficult home situations, from communities with no resources. I've seen those young people go on to be literally brain surgeons, Silicon Valley lawyers, award-winning educators. One's a Hollywood movie star. Why did that happen? Why did they succeed? Because they had people in their lives who cared, who believed in them, and who had the highest expectations for them. I know our schools can start to create that culture. I also remember we created the Ariel Community Academy. I remember going to the Robert Taylor homes to recruit children for a school that didn't even exist. We didn't even have a building, and trying to talk about our vision. And I had one mother who, not knowing me from a hole in the wall, said she would send her child, looked me in the eye, said she would send her child to our school if I could promise her one thing, that our school would be better than the public school she went to when she was a child. And in that mother, I saw both the historic failure of public education and, quite frankly, the great hope for the future. This is a mother who wanted only the best for her child, who demanded something better for her than what she received. But this is a mother who had never been able to escape poverty, had never been able to move out of the Robert Taylor homes. Why? Because she was illiterate. She had never been taught to read. I made her the promise that we would do something better for her child than she received, and today we make that same promise to every single parent in the school system whose school is failing. Work with us to create great new schools for your children. Work with us to design schools that become true community centers, schools with passionate teachers, cutting-edge partners, new ideas, and new approaches. We did this at Dodge and Williams Elementary Schools, and we want to do this in every single neighborhood of the city. I understand that people have questions, and that we have to work together to answer those questions. And change is always tough, and there will always be doubters or people who lack the courage to challenge the status quo. People said the mayor shouldn't have taken over the school system, but they were wrong. People said we shouldn't have ended social promotions, but they were wrong. People said our 8th graders couldn't beat national norms, but they were wrong. People said our schools couldn't compete with better funded schools in the suburbs and other school districts, and they were absolutely wrong. And now they say we shouldn't transform schools under Renaissance 2010, but time will prove them wrong again. And in fact, we already have. In communities all across Chicago, where neighborhood schools and new schools are flourishing. We see it in our military academies and in our charter schools with long waiting lists. And we see the transformation in high schools where we're breaking up and creating much smaller, much more personal learning environments. Schools like Bowen and Orr and South Shore, schools that were schools of last resort that are now becoming schools of choice. At its heart, Renaissance is really about a couple of things. It's about having the courage to take the difficult path. It's about not being satisfied and embracing our challenges rather than celebrating our successes. It's about demanding more of ourselves and each other. It's about never giving up on anyone. And it's about defying the negative stereotype of what poor children can and cannot do. I've seen it all my life, and I know what they can do. They can do anything, and we as adults, we as educators, we as community leaders, we just simply have to give them that chance. Renaissance 2010 is about hope and faith and a belief in the potential of children. With so much going for us, we can't possibly fail. And the one thing that keeps us going against all odds is the children. I believe in them, I believe in their potential, and I believe in their future. Thank you so much.
Just tell them to get the question and go to the mic. It's good. Is Father Flagler, where is he sitting? Okay. Arne's going to take some questions. If you want to just go to the microphone, state your name, and then Father Flagler, when we're done, maybe I'd impose on you to say a little benediction. I would have called on you for an invocation in the beginning. So go to the microphone. Arne will take some questions, and state your name.
Are there any other Chicago public school graduates here that are proud of what's happening in Chicago? Yes. You mentioned briefly the $9 million grant that you just got from the federal government, and you mentioned several foundations. Can you elaborate briefly on the other support you've gotten from corporate Chicago and corporate America and the foundation, and most importantly, why that's significant and why you want to encourage more of it?
That corporate support and philanthropic support is so critically important because as everyone here knows, we're desperately underfunded here in Illinois. And just to give you a couple quick numbers, Illinois ranks 48 out of 50 states in the amount of money going to public education. It's a dismal funding record. Illinois is the only state in the country to get an F from Education Week in terms of the great disparities between the haves and have-nots. We here in Chicago get less than half the money of those that live in Winnetka and Lake Forest and other places every single year to educate children. And so what we have to do until the state makes some dramatic and fundamental changes, which has to happen, until that happens, even when that does, we have to have the corporate community step up, and they've been extraordinarily supportive. And what we really tried to do is be very, very clear in our priorities. So whether it's helping us on the reading initiative, whether it's helping us recruit great talent, whether it's funding our new schools, whether it's funding our after-school programs, every single one of our core strategies, we're getting tremendous support. And I think if I can't sell the corporate and philanthropic community and what we're doing, then something must be wrong with our plan, with our strategy. So every dollar we're investing in these areas, we're getting lots and lots of leverage. And it's just so critically important, not just the financial resources that are critical, but there's some intellectual help. There's really thought partners who help us strategize and think through, what does it take to be a great principal? How do we help prepare them? How do we create these great new schools? How much time do we need? And so both from an idea standpoint and from a fiscal standpoint, that we've had great, great support. And again, I just think it goes back to the character of Chicago. That I don't think, when I talk to my peers around the country, you don't see those same levels of support. You don't see people stepping up. There's something about this fabric of the city that's so very special, and people in my position are extraordinarily lucky to have those opportunities.
Thank you, and congratulations on your
Thanks.
Questions? Just go to the microphone and state your name.
Hi, I'm Black with National University. In your listing of the resources, Chicago is also a city of great colleges and universities. How do you see us playing a part in that?
I actually neglected to mention that, and I apologize. We have extraordinary universities, and National Louis, as you well know, is helping us in so many different ways. Universities are doing many things. We didn't have enough reading specialists. We're sending these teachers back to school to get reading endorsements. We've had great, great partnerships there. What I'm very interested in going forward is I would love to see all of our universities actually run schools for us. run a Chicago public school, run a charter, run a contract, be part of Renaissance 2010. One of our best charters in town is University of Chicago has down North Campbell Open Charter School. They're actually looking to expand into a couple more sites, which is very, very different from the traditional University of Chicago model. There's real passion. We're real interested in doing that. I would love to see every university have a school, start your own school, or adopt a cluster of schools and really help us drive professional development. And the university can bring to bear so many different resources, not just teachers, but social workers, and people can volunteer, people can tutor, people with computer expertise. And we have some universities doing extraordinary things and some really innovative partnerships. But at the end of the day, I would love to see every university run your own school, run your own Chicago public school. I challenge them to think about that.
Thanks. So wonderful looking at.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.